"Head in the mountain," my niece said to my husband back from his trip. He froze. I hit record. His confession ended our marriage and someone's life. My grandfather is facing a crisis. My niece, who is 5, used to make these bizarre pronouncements. They frequently seemed to be foreshadowing what would occur with our family. The moment was when my dad had a sudden heart attack. Her predictive ability was fully apparent when my husband acted in a certain manner. It was after he returned from a work trip. She looked at him and said, "I feel sorry if you only throw away your head in the mountain. You need to bury them together." This accurately reflected her words. I'm Melanie, and I'm 38. My husband, Niall, is 40, making him 2 years older than me. We got married 13 years ago, where we were both employed. We are still at the same company, although we work in different areas. For 13 years post-wedding, we underwent fertility treatments, longing for a baby, but we never had any luck, so ultimately we opted to just be the two of us. I still daydream every day about how wonderful it would have been to have a kid, but despite that, my life with my husband has been fulfilling, and I felt satisfied. Plus, my sister has a daughter, Tara, who is 5 now. She's a sweet girl, and she and I are very close. She comes to our place roughly every 2 weeks, and we always have dinner together. I've even been looking up different meals that I think kids will like for these dinners. I enjoy creating menus that Tara will be excited about. Tara has a little bit of a mysterious gift. Initially, it seemed like nothing significant, so I brushed it off. It began when she'd come over and ask, "You're having pasta for supper tonight, right?" I adore pasta, and she'd accurately predict what was for dinner. Nobody had mentioned a thing, and what's more, I was actually about to go out and buy the ingredients, but Tara knew it instantly. After that, Tara's uncanny abilities kept popping up. This all happened prior to my dad's illness being found out. She just stated out of the blue, "Grandpa's in a bad way." I didn't comprehend the gravity of it at the time, but within a few days my father experienced a heart attack. He'd always had a persistent heart issue, but Tara anticipated my father's medical event when she stated, "Grandpa is in trouble." I became absolutely certain Tara had foreseen my father's incident. From that point forward, whenever Tara mentioned someone being in difficulty, we became extremely observant. And eventually, the moment arrived. Once again, Tara said, "My great-grandma is in a bad way." My great-grandma was already in the hospital, battling incurable cancer. If my grandmother was in trouble, did that imply she was going to pass away shortly? The entire family was constantly monitoring my grandmother's condition. Then, after a few days, my grandmother took her final breath. I reflected on the occurrences and calculated the time lapse between her forecast of my father's attack and the day he actually fell ill, and the days between her prophecy about my grandmother's passing and the day she actually passed away, and it was precisely 4 days. So 4 days following Tara's warning that someone was facing difficulty, the belief that something would occur became widespread. Following that, she informed me, "Aunt Melanie is in trouble." I was completely unaware of any impending danger and had no clue what the issue might be. But without fail, something always materialized 4 days after Tara made a statement. Since it was a proven truth, I continued my usual routine after those 4 days, being extremely cautious. Then I was traveling back to my residence. I was stopped at a red light on a heavily trafficked road when a vehicle crashed into me from the rear, blaring its horn. My first thought was, is this the incident Tara foretold? And luckily, I was able to dodge the vehicle. The car, at high speed, slammed into an electric pole and sustained significant damage. It's no overstatement to say that I was spared thanks to Tara's premonition. I made it home safely after the incident, and so I realized that Tara's prediction related to a car accident. As soon as I got home, I immediately phoned Tara. "Tara, thank you for today. I'm so relieved because of you." I expressed my gratitude for letting me know I would be in a predicament. Tara sounded incredibly happy, I could tell even over the phone, and she replied, "Ha ha ha, I'm so happy nothing happened to Auntie Melanie." It seems Tara's abilities were only meant to help family, at least presently, but I also had the feeling it's a power best kept hidden from others. If it were misused, it would be Tara who would suffer the consequences. Though there was one person who was uneasy about this ability, and that was my husband. I know my husband truly adored Tara when she was a small child as well. But once she began showcasing this ability, he started keeping his distance from her. I remember I questioned my husband directly. "Do you already dislike Tara?" He answered me, "It's not precisely hate, but it's a little unsettling, don't you think? It's one thing to predict the evening's meal, but anticipating what might cause your death or make you ill." He told me never to reveal to anyone else about the nature of her power. I couldn't believe he'd speak about our wonderful niece in a way that made her seem unsettling. In my view, there's no basis for hating Tara, even considering that her gift specifically involves only our family. Regardless of how often I urged my husband not to be cold towards Tara, it didn't change anything. so I made the decision that he and Tara should interact as little as feasible. Ironically, as I worked to keep Tara at a distance, my husband, quite unexpectedly, started to steer clear of me too. First, he began arriving home later than usual. When he did come home, we rarely exchanged words, and the only remark he'd make was, "You're about to take a bath, aren't you?" Naturally, when I tried to converse with him, he'd say, "I'm exhausted from work, please be quiet," and he would then remain silent. Even on vacation, he goes off somewhere by himself. He never mentions where he's headed. Moreover, I've observed an increase in the number of his work-related trips. Previously, he'd take one business trip monthly, however, now it's increased to 2 or even 3. I didn't have a clue what was going on then, but something happened one day. My spouse was scheduled to be away on a work trip, commencing that very day. It was going to span both day and night. My sister and her kids were set to stay with us while he was gone. I wrapped up my job right on schedule and headed straight home. Not long after, my sister and her family showed up. "I'll start preparing the evening meal, so could you all hang tight for a little while?" Suddenly Tara asked, "Are we having hamburgers for dinner tonight?" With her uncanny ability, she guessed correctly right away. "Yep, hamburgers it is. Want to lend a hand?" No longer thrown by her intuition, I asked Tara to assist. "Sure," Tara answered happily, and we started getting the hamburgers ready. We completed the cooking, and we had a really nice dinner with my sister and her crew. I then took a bath with Tara, and we had some quality time together. And before I knew it, it was time for Tara to go to bed. After that, it was time to sip some drinks with my sister and her hubby. I quietly mentioned that my husband, I brought up that my husband was kind of avoiding me. I get the feeling that Niall's been distancing himself lately. He's coming home late and we don't really talk much anymore. What do you think the issue could be? Oh, maybe it's just your imagination, don't you think? Niall has always shown how much he cares for you, right? I'm not sure, but he seems to be taking more work trips, plus he's going out by himself on his days off. He doesn't talk to me about it, and it's got me concerned. If I'm so concerned about him, why haven't I checked with someone at the office? Even though I work in a different division, it's still the same company. Surely I know at least one person over there, don't I? When my brother-in-law mentioned that, the solution clicked. Oh yeah, I should just ask around. I felt like there was nothing I could do about it previously. Before fretting about it, I should have tackled the situation head-on. As soon as that thought crossed my mind, I felt a sudden burst of energy. I determined to speak with my coworkers at work first thing tomorrow. In the interim, it was 2:30 a.m. It was time to get some sleep or I'd be dragging myself around all day. Just then Tara, who I thought was asleep, woke up. "Uncle Niall is coming home." Something didn't seem right. I told her, "Tara, Uncle Niall isn't coming home, okay?" I told her as much, but she retorted, "No, he's not. He's already on his way here. He'll be here soon." She repeated that he'd be here soon. If Tara said it, it's probably true, but why would he come home so late when he claimed to be on a business trip? I also had been feeling uneasy recently. Not long after, the front door swung open. We all hurried to the door to meet my husband, who appeared exhausted and drawn. The moment she saw him, Tara exclaimed, "Uncle Niall, I feel bad if you only toss your head in the mountain. You should bury them together." "What?" My sister, her husband, and I, who were there, stared at Tara, and confusion swirled in our minds. My husband, though, was different. Devastated by Tara's statements, I retrieved the self-protection bat we kept in the umbrella holder. I aimed the bat toward Tara. "Watch out!" I yelled, and instantly my sister's spouse positioned himself between us. He grabbed the bat, raised it, twisted my husband's arm, and restrained him. That was incredibly fast. Now that I consider it, my sister's husband had trained in self-defense. He likely never imagined needing it in a circumstance like this. My husband, pinned to the floor, struggled initially but eventually stopped resisting and quieted down. My sister was embracing Tara. I resolved to speak to my husband, who was being held. "Sweetheart, no more temper tantrums. I'll convince him to release you if you guarantee it." My husband slowly nodded in response to my words. I requested that my sister's husband release his grip. My husband was then freed, though he couldn't move from where he was standing for a time. I encouraged him to stand, and eventually he did. Then we met in the living room to converse with my husband. I planned to ask him what terrible things Tara had said earlier. I quietly began recording, using the voice recorder function on my phone, just in case. Should my husband attempt to flee after this, I'll provide the recording to the relevant authorities, and he confessed everything. These past few months. Ever since he started distancing himself from me, my husband had been having an affair. Her name is Bella. She's 28, much younger than I am. I've discovered that half of the travel my husband's been taking lately, the ones he called business trips, were actually rendezvous with another woman. My husband left the house earlier today with the plan of embarking on yet another one of these affairs. After they got to the hotel room, they began to argue about something that was pretty insignificant. The subject of their conversation then shifted, becoming a request for him to end our marriage. My husband stated that he didn't want to leave me, even though he'd been treating me coldly. Honestly, I wasn't sure if he was being truthful or just trying to keep her happy. When he told her he wouldn't leave me, their argument grew even more intense. They ended up having a really loud, passionate fight. Then my husband finally lost control of himself. When he shoved Bella, he pushed her too hard, and she stumbled, hitting her head on the edge of a table, and then she collapsed. At that moment, my husband seemed to think Bella was dead, without actually taking any steps to verify if she was really gone. Right now, only my husband knows if Bella actually passed away. Then my easily angered husband recalled a news story about a body that had been decapitated in order to slow down the identification of the victim as Bella. Believing that doing the same would postpone the discovery of the body, my husband quickly left the hotel and bought what he needed, including a knife. Next, he removed the head in the bathroom. He then managed to sneak out of the hotel with the severed head and all of Bella's things. They put the head in the mountain, precisely as Tara had advised. I think, just like Tara mentioned, the body's likely still at the hotel, nobody's found it yet. I carefully examined my husband's attire and noticed the bottom of his suit, specifically the hems and cuffs, were dirty with mud stains. Plus, there was a significant amount of baggage present. That probably held Bella's belongings. Therefore, my husband completed the majority of his explanation. At that point, Tara was completely lost in her own world. I'm uncertain if Tara can follow this whole narrative, and I'd prefer not to make her hear this awful story. I was relieved she decided to go to sleep earlier. Once my husband was done with the story, he asked, "Can you please keep this to yourself?" "Because we're family, yes. You'll protect me, won't you?" He held on to me tightly. "No way. If you truly don't want me to contact the authorities, then we will, and we'll share this whole thing." I responded in a cold tone. "You don't even have any evidence. You wouldn't even know who Bella is or which hotel she stayed at based on what I told you, would you? You also don't know which mountain Bella's head was discarded on, do you? Or what? Are you going to ask Tara to guess where Bella's head ended up?" My husband's eyes reflected a sort of craziness, and he began to laugh. I believed it was going to be simple. If a headless body gets discovered in the morning, and it's a woman called Bella, and I am positive it was my husband involved in all of this, the authorities will be able to trace him through security cameras and quickly figure out where he went. If the authorities knew the specific mountain where she was buried, I reckon they could locate Bella's head pretty fast by employing police dogs and the manpower available to law enforcement. I have the entire discussion saved on a recording. If I present this to the police, I feel it'll serve as powerful proof. It's not like I'm totally lacking any supporting material. I think it might be best if you went to the police without making a fuss, don't you think? When I had finished what I was saying, my husband seemed to deflate. The following day, I brought him to the police station. The day beforehand, while sorting through my husband's things, we came across a package addressed to a woman called Bella. Inside, there was an employee ID, and I learned she was my husband's underling at the same workplace. As long as they knew she was a colleague, they could simply contact the company and quickly acquire any relevant details. My husband must have brought that package home, figuring he could put off its discovery, yet in fact it prompted an earlier revelation. What a fool, my husband. I thought he wasn't very deep. I'm convinced that without Tara's comments, this situation probably would not even have come to light, but I'm starting to suspect that Tara's presence in our place wasn't a random occurrence. It was almost destined that Tara would be here with us. Now that I think about it, Tara's behavior seemed different. She seems to have completely forgotten everything from the day before. Her own words, the ones about feeling bad if you discard only the head in the mountain, have vanished entirely from her memory. Plus, I sensed a slight shift in the vibe. Previously, she seemed older, maybe because of her enigmatic abilities, but now she resembled a lively 5-year-old. Observing this, my sister remarked, "I'll wager she hasn't a clue what we're eating tonight." I'd had a similar intuition as well. It felt like Tara's mysterious power had been completely drained yesterday. Later, my spouse admitted everything to the authorities. He likely felt he had no further avenues of escape, since we'd urged him to confess. If he couldn't get away with it, I figured he'd receive a more lenient penalty by being honest about his actions. I realize it seemed to me like there was no such thing as a lesser sentence for taking a life and dismembering the remains, but if that was my husband's thinking, I was okay with it. My husband and I divorced while he was incarcerated. The reality that my husband was a killer was difficult to swallow, but what was even more difficult to accept was his infidelity. We spoke extensively with my in-laws, and they committed to covering the expenses associated with the affair. I contemplated making a claim for spousal support against a woman named Bella, but she was gone. I made the decision to let it go. I just figured it was best to have no further dealings with Bella's grieving family. My husband's release from prison is a long way off. It's difficult to believe that after everything he did, he's still in the news, and his punishment is so easy. I'm hoping he'll really think about his actions, consider the consequences. However, I made the choice to leave the company I was with, switching to a different position. Honestly, I was really uncomfortable being at the same workplace as my husband and the woman he was cheating with. It wasn't my goal to just bolt from the company, but I chose to resign because it would only make everyone else around me feel uneasy. My new job came about because a business partner of my sister's husband's company offered me the position. A big plus was that I could get paid the same amount I had before. I also found a new place to live. I leased a new apartment that had plenty of space just for me. I wanted to remain close to Tara, so I found a place that wasn't too far from her. Moving forward, I truly hope to enjoy being single and that I'll have a good relationship with my sister and her family. I'm aiming to give it my all at work and have fun, so I can be happy with my life.